This is our day 1 video for Unit 8. So this unit we're going to be focusing all on right triangles. And the first thing we're going to talk about with right triangles is the Pythagorean theorem. So the Pythagorean theorem is a mathematical principle that relates the lengths of the three sides of a right triangle. Right, so it's important to see with this theorem is that we're only talking about right triangles. Right, so that means a triangle that contains a right angle. Right, so it has to have a 90-degree angle to be able to use this. So using this theorem, what we can do is find the length of any missing side. Find a missing side length of a right triangle as long as we have the lengths of the other two sides. So some vocabulary, we've used this already in the last unit, but let's go over it again. The longest side in a right triangle is called the hypotenuse. And the two shorter sides are both called legs. So this is the same vocabulary when we had the HL theorem in Unit 7. That stood for hypotenuse leg. So it's that exact same vocabulary. So here's our formula for Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's our Pythagorean theorem formula. You can see how that relates in the picture. The important thing about the formula is that the hypotenuse length is always a length that's by itself on one side of the equation. And the lengths of the legs are always on the same side together. So it doesn't really matter which one we call A, which one we call B in terms of the legs, as long as we have the correct length, the hypotenuse on the right side. So we always have to have hypotenuse, longest side, on one side by itself, and then the two legs on the other side. Right, and that's what the picture shows. A and B are both the legs, and C is the hypotenuse. And we know it's hypotenuse because it's the longest side. It's also opposite the 90-degree angle. So this is the last piece of the notes, and then you're going to be working on your own after this. We're just going to go through 2 examples of how we use this all together. So there's basically 2 cases you can have when you're finding the missing side, right? You can either be finding a leg or you're finding the hypotenuse, right? So if you're finding the leg, that means you have the hypotenuse, and one of the other legs have the hypotenuse, that means you have both legs. So it's just important when we set up the formula, make sure you know which one we're finding. Are we finding a leg, or are we finding the hypotenuse? So if the first triangle on the left, 3 is a leg, have a missing side, and 5 across from the right angle, it's the longest side, is the hypotenuse. So when I set up the formula, I have to make sure that 5 is by itself on one side. So 5 squared equals, by itself on one side, 3 squared plus x squared. And then we're just going to solve for x. 5 squared is 25, 3 squared is 9. I want to to get x by itself on that side, so I'm going to subtract 9. So x squared is 16, and then x is 4. I'll take the square root of 16, so 4 squared is what makes 16. X equals negative 4 also solves this equation, but we're talking about a length, and so we're talking about a positive number. So length is always positive. So that's why we use the positive square root for these. So triangle on the right, we have the 8 and the 6. These are both legs. And our missing side is across from the right angle, so this is the hypotenuse, our missing side x. So we set up our formula, we have to make sure x is by itself on one side of the equation. So x squared is the hypotenuse, so on its own, legs go on the other side. Doesn't matter what order, we can say 6 squared plus 8 squared, or 8 squared plus 6 squared. So 6 squared is 36, and 8 squared is 64. Add those together, get 100, which means x has to be 10. 10 squared makes 100. Square root of 100 is 10. So that's our hypotenuse length is 10. If you want to see some more examples using this, you can search for Pythagorean theorem. It's a short video for today, so hopefully it's give you a lot of time to practice in class. On the back side of your note page, there's a whole bunch of problems. There's 12 problems there for you to practice, making sure you're identifying correctly whether you're finding the leg or the hypotenuse, and using the formula and working through the problems.